Hello, my name's David. I was a developer on GTA 5, worked at Rockstar for 12 years as an environment artist. And just having a little wander around in GTA 5 enhanced version here. We're on max settings. It's looking really nice. Particularly enjoying the rain and all the reflections. So I thought I'd have a little jump into GTA 5 again. And I've been musing on a question. Actually, it's been asked a number of times, and it seems to be very much kind of on people's minds lately, I suppose. But the question was, why are AAA games declining, or why is there a perception that AAA games are in decline? What's going on? What's the deal? All that. And I guess like probably anyone at any game studio would probably be able to give you an opinion on that, and that's all it is, isn't it? Really, at the end of the day, informed opinion, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, I've worked in the industry for about 17 years, and it's changed a lot, and probably, and this feeds into the question, probably the biggest shift is from smaller studios that maybe one or two people have founded in the 90s or 80s even and got successful. Well, in the 90s and onward, they started selling up to either bigger games companies or, big publishers, things like that. And so your truly independent games companies then started becoming, sort of owned by larger entities. Your Microsofts, your Ubisofts, your Take-Twos, your Sonys, all of that sort of stuff. And, along with that comes a loss of freedom, creative freedom, financial freedom. I saw it firsthand at Bizarre Creations. And it was a guy called Martin Chudley who had built that company. He'd done it all himself, and he got some successful games. Built that studio up into a sort of medium-sized company, around about sort of 200-ish people when I was there. And eventually, along comes Activision and buys the whole company, lock, stock, and barrel. So that's the beginning of the end, really, for Bizarre Creations. Because I can understand it. Who wouldn't turn down 50 million quid to sell the company that they've made? They're set for life, then, aren't they? It's an irresistible carrot for all of these people that sold their companies. They built a company up from nothing, and then a publisher comes along with all the money in the world, and hey, here's some millions. And I kind of challenge anyone to refuse that, wouldn't you? But it's had a massive impact on the whole gaming industry. After a decade or two of that sort of business going on, suddenly you can barely find a truly independent games company. I mean, do you know any? Can you actually think of any truly independent, wholly self-owned games company that's not owned by one of the big publishers or even a medium-sized sort of publisher? I mean, I can't even think of any off the top of my head. And so with that sort of mass kind of aggregation of games companies, and these big tentpole sort of publishers can have loads and loads of studios under their umbrella. And with that comes a sort of, tendency for a publisher to strategically use their studios. to maximize profits and all that, as everything is at the end of the day, isn't it? So you've got a loss of creative freedom there. What the publisher says goes. So that kind of does away with a lot of those quirky ideas that would often come from game studios back in the day, where you didn't have any sort of money people dictating, studies show that this genre is going to be generating this much, blah, blah. Game studios were very much focused on the fun part of games and whatever seemed to be a cool idea at the time. And so there was very much more spontaneity in games development by then. And then, the late 90s, early 2000s, the money was starting to take over. And, publishers in it for the money, aren't they? They're a business to make money. So that's their focus. Whereas nearly all game studios were started back in the day because someone really liked games and they wanted to make their own games. So they come from a pedigree of looking for the joy and pleasure and fun in their product. So there's been that tension for a long time in games companies between publishers and developers. Publishers just want the money. They don't care how you get it. They just want a game that sells. They really, if this biggest selling game or the most likely to make money sort of game was, frog racing, then they would want you to do frog racing, and so on. That's all that matters to publishers. It's just the money at the end of the day. And game studios and developers, they want to make cool stuff that's fun. So there's a tension between those two. So that's one aspect, loss of creativity, basically, or a leashing of creativity, perhaps you could say. But aside from that, art development costs have spiraled as we've got more and more sort of graphical fidelity, fancy looking games, all this lovely stuff that we see in our modern AAA games, which is, as an artist, is wonderful. I love it. It's lovely to see and great to be a part of. And that costs money, doesn't it? Oh, lupins. Have we got lupins? No, they're not lupins, are they? But I remember a great deal of these flowers getting some love and attention lavished on them. I sat next to the chap who did a lot of flower work. It's nice. But never mind digressions. So spiraling development costs, essentially. More people, more artists. Generally, I'm focusing on art because that's my area, but more programmers too. More of everything, really. But art is one of your biggest costs in a game. Art-heavy games, especially GTA 5 like this, very art-heavy. Which is why you get such interesting environments, lots of creative people pouring their sort of creative love into them. But, that is getting unsustainable. It's been getting unsustainable for a long time, years. And so it's getting to the point where studios have to sell an absolute ton of a game to break even on a game. And not that many are doing it. There's a lot of studios. All these mass layoffs we've seen over the last few years. Is it fallout from AI and all that lot? And I don't think it's anything to do with AI over the last few years. It might start creeping in more and more. But I think it's just been the cost of making these games. And they've not been selling enough to justify the hundreds of millions of dollars, pounds, whatever, that gets put into them. So with that in mind, you start to see a sort of retreat into what is safe. What's going to be more sure of making money? What's the safer bet? And, along comes the remaster, doesn't it? Of which we've seen many, many, many by now. And I don't have anything against a good remaster. I think it's, for the moment, it's a phenomena that meshes quite well with what gamers are wanting and what publishers are wanting. in many cases anyway. Because who doesn't want to play a beloved game from yesteryear in all the shiny new glory that we get? I mean, I really, I love a remaster. It's great. As long as it's not like a recent game. I don't want a remaster of a game that was out 2 years ago. I want remasters of classic old games. And of course, there's a sweet spot with the remaster, isn't there? Because it can't be a game that's so old that it would need to be rebuilt from the ground up. But it's like a game, maybe like 10 years old, maybe even 15 years old. That is, they can still use the assets and just, often just put a load of new shaders on and smarten them up. I mean, a bit like the recent Oblivion remaster. Essentially the same game, just looks a lot nicer, doesn't it? And you can tell that it's really just a visual overhaul because the same bugs that were in the original come along into the remaster, don't they? So it's a giveaway that. But this retreat into the remaster, I think it's going to run out of steam at some point, I suspect, and where to go from then, I don't know. So, whilst the remaster is often a very nice thing to have, it's hardly a new thing, is it? It's not a new creation. It's falling back on mining the past. And those new ideas that might be a bit risky, but could be really interesting, they're getting sort of, bottom of the pile sort of treatment in favour of something that's more likely to make money. It's the question of, have we got a better chance of remastering game X or for, doing the development on a risky new IP? And publishers just choose the easier option, the more likely to sell, And so we're not really getting that feed in of creativity every now and again like we used to do in games. Because it's not just like a game that gets released and it's new and cool. What about all the people that play that and get ideas? What about all the developers that play X super creative game and get inspired by it? What about that? That's not happening as much as it used to do. So it's all connected. It all feeds back into the machine, as it were, the system, and we're simply not getting as many new creative ideas getting disseminated throughout the industry and among the gaming public. It's a shame, isn't it? But it's the harsh financial realities of the world we are in. Added on top of that, we come to all the layoffs that we've seen over the last few years, and literally tens of thousands of developers have been laid off, and many of those will have gone off to different industries because for many people the games industry is too unstable. If you've got a family, like certainly say at this moment in time in 2025, mid 2025, there is no way on this planet I would move any distance to work in a games company. Not a chance in hell would I uproot my family and my life, like certainly going to another country for a games job. I mean, to me, you'd have to be insane to do that, because the chances of you getting laid off are, relatively high, aren't they? I mean, if you're young and single, and it's less of an issue, isn't it? You're much more mobile then. But for us developers who are settled with families, I wouldn't do it, and many of my friends say the same thing. It's just not worth that uprooting and that sort of upheaval for a relatively unstable job. I mean, probably if you're moving countries to Rockstar, that's probably your best bet. I mean, I'm not towing a company line or anything. I'm just stating a fact that if you're lucky enough to work at Rockstar, you've probably got the most secure games job in the world. When was the last time you heard Rockstar lay anyone off? Just look at the past history of any games company that you would like to work for. And have a look over the last few years. What's the record in layoffs, studio closures, and stuff like that for publishers? Just look at the past history. So think about all those tens of thousands of developers that have been laid off. Good portion of them not in the games industry anymore. Many of them veteran developers with a lot of experience, and it paints a picture of a massive loss of skills in the industry as well. And where are you going to get that back from? You know, uh, that is a contributing factor why games are just sort of, there's a certain stagnation. Certainly, there's still good games coming out though. It's not all doom and gloom, but skills don't come from nowhere. Skills come from developers being allowed to experiment and work on games that give them creative freedom, and technical challenges, artistic challenges, game design challenges, and that's how you learn, by doing and experiencing and developing. And when you lose a lot of staff through redundancies like that, those skills are, they're not being captured in a box to be opened up by the publisher and liberally sprayed over a new studio. You've lost them, they've gone. So there's a huge, well, I call it a brain drain maybe. Yeah, that's it's not coming back, is it? It'll take a long time to regenerate all of that loss of skills that we've lost in the games industry over the last few years. And I like to think that other industries are benefiting from a lot of that. It's nothing's ever lost. It's just sort of munged around a bit, isn't it? Really, it's a bit like energy, isn't it? It just changes form, and that's fine. But for the games industry at large, it's a huge loss, and people feel it, don't they? It's palpable, it's discernible, um, it's perceptible in the sort of samey run-of-the-mill releases, the unadventurous game designs, the mistakes in game design that keep getting made again and again, all of that sort of stuff, the timidity in game design, retreating into the safe past. So, to me, to answer that question, why are we getting a decline? It's all that. There was a question of, are game devs just not as good as back in my generation, maybe? But no, that's not it at all. I don't think it. There's a loss of experience, a loss of experience that comes from learning from your peers, your older peers, when you're in a studio. But other than that, games developers are still the creatively driven, fun-loving, cool people that they've always been. It's just a different environment that they're now in. So when you see a game that's a little bit different, that's pushing boundaries, that's trying to explore new ground, then you should rejoice at that and lend your support to them as much as you can. Take a punt on these games that are a bit different. Show your support with your wallet is essentially what it is, isn't it? Because if you keep buying the same old, then publishers will just keep producing the same old. That's the only real power we have in this world, is voting with your wallet, in my opinion. So, use it. But, in the meantime, I think we've still got plenty of good games to go at. I know I'm having the time of my life, replaying lots of games at the moment, not least GTA 5 and RDR. I'm just, eagerly awaiting GTA 6 because, there's a game that's going to be pushing boundaries, isn't it? Not many studios have got the luxury of time, money, and talent that Rockstar has. That's a rare thing. And, they've got all the money in the world, haven't they? and they can produce these amazing worlds and games. And I think when GTA 6 comes out, all that is going to show. You know, I think people will go wild for it. So I hope that kind of answers that question, at least from my experience, from my eyes, and the things I've seen in the games industry. That's what it seems like to me. Perhaps another developer could have a completely different take on it. I'm sure they will. You know, I don't have all the answers. I just try and share what I've seen with my own experience, you know. But I'm also just really enjoying having a little walk in the Vinewood Hills. It's great, isn't it? I mean, it's an ideal little place to just wander around while having a chat. So it's great fun, and I'll bid you farewell as we look up toward Griffith Observatory. Love that place. Great, and the city below. It's been a nice little wander and a chat. So yeah, I hope that was interesting, and I'll see you in another video. Thanks for joining me. See you later. Bye.